Hello, everyone. We are here again on our weekly meetings, and now I'm going to share some updates what happened during last week and like is still happening on these days, like at the beginning of this week. So actually, as usually, we are starting with the information about shellings, and preparing this slide, we want to highlight that these shellings are happening all over Ukraine. So we see here like Sumy Oblast, which is the north part of Ukraine, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, which is more like southern eastern part of Ukraine, in Donetsk Oblast, unfortunately, Mykolaiv, Odessa, which is south of Ukraine, and again in Kharkiv. And we are hearing as just regular news, but unfortunately people keep dying after these shellings, and again, like adult, children, etc. And what you can see that, for example, in Sumy Oblast, Russian forces shelled the village 17 times on August 17. So actually it happened only yesterday. And if we are talking about, for example, Donetsk Oblast, during these shellings, people might be killed. Unfortunately, 2 persons are killed, and we have 7 injured people. And if we are talking about Mykolaiv or Odessa Oblast, again, there are like missile attacks in Odessa, and in Mykolaiv, Russian forces fired on university. So, like, again, there were just building damage, no casualties reported, but still it's a damage for our country. And we are talking about Kharkiv. Kharkiv is the city which is still keep like bombing, shelling, and now we can say that on August 16th, so just 2 days ago, 1 person was killed and 8 people were injured during the Russian shelling. This is information from Kharkiv Oblast Governor Oleg Sinehubov. And going to the next slide, here we'll like continue with our like sad statistics that Russia is using tornado rockets for shelling Kharkiv, because this city is struggling very much during these days and during last months, unfortunately. And we are talking also about Zaporizhzhia Oblast, where the shelling is happening also, and the same, which was like, I cannot say unexpected, but at the same time, we're talking about strikes in Zhytomyr Oblast. Yes, we're talking the missiles in Zhytomyr Oblast, which is close to Kiev. And due to the information of Zhytomyr Oblast Governor Vitaly Bunechko, 2 explosions was heard near Zhytomyr, and they were confirmed. And they were confirmed as a result of Russian missile attacks. And like, again, we're talking about Odessa Oblast, and only now people keep discovering who were the people killed in March or in spring in Kiev Oblast. And as of now, some bodies of civilians that were killed like 5 months ago, now people start to understand who they are and identify these people. So going further to the next slide. Here are like, again, the sad news that there is like, I would say, not famous, but well-known fighter pilot, Anton Listopad, and unfortunately he was killed. And you can see the pictures from his Facebook. And like, he was studying in college in Ivano-Frankivsk, and couple years ago, yes, he was recognized as Ukraine's top fighter pilot. And even like last year, we had our 30th anniversary of our independence, and there was a column in Hrushchatik, and he was a part of this column. And as a sad case, but a few days before his death, our president Volodymyr Zelensky awarded him with the 3rd Great Order for Courage. So it's a very sad news for all of us and for his family that heroes are going from us. Going further, to the next slide, I remember that last time we highlighted about the damage, potential damage, and the disaster which might happen when the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will be fully attacked, because it's still attacking, it's under attack. Unfortunately, they will not all successful, but sometimes the fire happening on the plant, etc. And all European Union members and other countries join that. They join the statement to protect this plant, yes, and the countries argue that Russia's control over this plant is a threat to nuclear safety, and Russia, which has constantly been shelling Ukrainian position from the plant's territory, has been accused of using it as a shield and tool of blackmail, unfortunately. And another news which is happening in our Ukrainian news area, and maybe you heard about it, that Dmytro Kuleba, it's our foreign minister, he called for the tourist visa ban for Russians, and actually he asked to ban all this tourist visa for the Russians. And again, it creates like a lot of discussions, especially for like why like normal people should suffer from Russia or etc. But yes, he put his statement on Twitter on August 14th, so it was like just a few years ago, and he put just some reasons why it needs to be happening. And what I know that I'm currently based in Poland, that Poland already made this and claimed this law, and they refuse to accept Russians and people with Russian passports in its country. So maybe some other countries will follow it. So going further to the next slide, we want to highlight about how Ukraine is using the weapon which we are having like from our allies, yes, and that maybe you've heard that there were some explosions in Crimea for the first time, and that Ukraine attacked Saki. Saki is a village, and that Ukraine attacked Saki air base. But again, neither from official Ukrainian part, nor from the official Russian part. There were, I'm sorry, can you please mute yourself, someone who's speaking? Thank you. So there were no official information that it was like Ukrainian attacks, but the United States Defense Department, it confirmed in its statement that Ukrainian forces bombarded the Russian-controlled Saki airbase on Crimea on August 9th. And afterwards, there were some more explosions that, like this explosion, they damaged railway in occupied Crimea, etc., etc. So, like I would say the two sides are keeping silent, but we understand that finally we can use these weapons which we got, yes, and finally we can attack, even not that much as we wanted, but at least in some areas, in some directions. And
sorry,
again,
Nata,
yes.
For interrupting, attacked like some military basic object, like just to emphasize.
Yeah, but
not
actually
just...
it's stated that it attacked Saki air base, yes. So we're talking about military air base, yes. And then, for example, in some Ukrainian cities which are occupied, like for example, we hear from Mariupol area that partisans are working and there are damages railway bridges, and they are fighting against this occupation power, yes, and they try to help themselves how they can and destroy and damage everything which is possible, not to help Russian forces going further into the cities, etc., etc. So going further to the next slide. This slide is about the Red Cross, yes, that Russian forces denied Red Cross full access to Ukrainian assets in Olenivka. And actually this information was from Alexander Vlasenko, who is a spokesman of the International Committee of the Red Cross. and he told the Suspilne Media, it's the Ukrainian media, that the organization visited Olenivka, it's a city in Donetsk Oblast, twice after Ukrainian defenders were brought to prison. And these visits didn't meet the requirements of IRC, and they were too short, and the Red Cross employees couldn't visit the entire premise or to talk to the Ukrainian prisoners of war without the presence of Russian soldiers. So again, here we see how Russia interrupts even the influence of the international organizations within this war. So going further to the next slide, here, yes, as I mentioned before in the previous slide, we were talking about the war crimes, and we have an information from our Prosecutor General Office. This Russian forces committed over 28,000 war crimes during this war. So it's a lot, it's a very huge number. And it was reported, like this is the latest data, it was reported on the August 13th. And again, Ukrainian law enforcement have also recorded 13,000 crimes against Ukraine's national security. And it's a very big amount of crimes, which definitely needs to be resolved and needs to be go like on the legal resolution. And talking about Azovstal, we have some news about this, that we're talking about Katerina Prokopenko, who is the wife of one of the Azovstal defenders. And she said that her husband was taken to Russia, and like it's preliminary information, but unfortunately she doesn't know exactly where he is now. And she added that the last time she heard from her husband was spring, so it was on May 23rd. And like after that, she didn't have any information from him. And like unfortunately, the fate of many of the soldiers are still unknown. And that's why we keep spreading this news about Azovstal defenders. And as you might remember, we invited another wife, yes, the lady who was also a wife of Azovstal defenders, to make it loud, to speak about it, and not let these people just go away, die, or disappear like in Russia. So going further to the next slide, we are talking about bodies of our fallen soldiers in the number of 19 who were returned to Ukraine. And its information was provided by the Ministry for Reintegration of the Temporary Occupied Territories, reported on August 16 that Ukraine had returned the bodies of 19 more fallen defenders. And like no details have been disclosed, but at least it is something that we have. And here on the picture, you can see the picture of our Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk, and overall she said that Ukraine have managed to return the bodies of more than 400 fallen defenders of our country. Going further to the next slide, going a little bit earlier, what I've told about the news that our Minister of Foreign Affairs, like Dmytro Kuleba, asked to recognize Russia as a state of terrorism and ban tourism visa. We can see here on this slide that according to the Latvian public broadcaster, the country's parliament, Sejm, issued a statement on the 11th of August, which has recognized Russian violence against civilians in Ukraine, and which has recognized Russia as a terrorist state. So it's kind of small but victory, which we have from our like friendly country. And again, they called other European Union countries to join this initiative. So going further to the next slide, now we want to share some news about Ukraine in the world. Mainly it's news about sport, about different championships, but why we wanted to put it here, because it's not only about our victories is in sport area, which might be normal and usual thing in the peaceful life. But here we want to highlight that, for example, the first news about Mikhailo Romanchuk, that he wins 1,500 free at European Championship. He's a swimmer, yes, and he dedicated his gold medal to his father, saying that his father has returned after fighting with Ukraine's military in eastern Ukraine. So he devoted his victory to him. Or another news about Ukrainian 9-year-old boy who becomes a world champion in karate despite he was training online. So it was not possibility for him to train with his coach, yes, and he was training online. And again, his coach even couldn't leave the Russian-occupied Berdyansk in Zaporizhia Oblast, but it was not an issue for him to win this competition. And again, we're talking about 8 gold medals won at the European Aquatics Championships, that Ukrainian artistic swimming team triumphantly completed its performance at the European Aquatics Championship in 2022, like this year, and they won a gold medal in every discipline it had participated in. So we can say that despite the hard times for Ukrainian sportsmen, they keep doing their job, I would say, and keep bringing victories to our countries despite our reality. And going further, to the next slide. Actually, that's it, but we want to highlight, as usual, how you can help Ukraine. And this slide and the next one, they are like our regular slides, that you can still keep boycotting Russian goods, be loud in social media, yes, putting some posts using hashtags, which you can see on the screen. You can report war propaganda from the television or from the websites or YouTube, where you can see these channels and you can see some fake news. You can sign different petitions on the websites where you can see it's very valuable for the changes which might happen in Ukraine. It's a website, change.org, openpetition.eu, and petition.parliament.uk. You can join the rallies if it's happening in your cities, in your country, in your communities, or you can even be a leader of this rally, yes. And you can increase military and humanitarian support to Ukraine, making any donations by your own. And on the left side of the screen, you can see where you can donate and how you can do it. And going to the next slide, I think it might be the last one. As usual, we encourage you to read the true news, like Ukrainian ones. So as usual, it's Ukrainian media, it's Ukrainska Pravda, it's Novaya Vremya and Kyiv Independent. All of them have news in English. And if you are using Telegram as an application, you can follow Ukraine Now Telegram channel, which is in English. And it's very easy for you to read this news. And they are often updating, and it's very fresh information on this Telegram channel. So I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much. And